Welcome to Stories That Matter. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with my special guest, Carey Gillam. Carey, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me today.
You know, I've been looking forward to this interview because of the book that you've written, the most recent one, the Monsanto Papers. And I'm a farm kid, and so I'm very familiar with the product Roundup. Grew up on a farm, we used it, never thought anything about it, didn't realize the problems that could come from it. And when I started reading your article in the newspaper, then we contacted you. I started looking at what you have written. Absolutely amazing. It is fantastic. Good job. And is the Monsanto Papers, is that your most recent one?
Yeah, this is the second book. My first book was somewhat similar and got quite a lot of attention. It was called Whitewash, the story of a weed killer, cancer, and the corruption of science. And that book really came about before the lawsuits went to trial, before any sort of Roundup litigation was really making a lot of news, and was based on 20 years of research that I had done as a reporter at Reuters Newswire, covering Monsanto and the agrochemical industry. And so that book it was sort of an academic book. I've lectured at a lot of universities and spoken to the European Parliament after that book came out, because it really exposed how Monsanto had deceived farmers and regulators and consumers about the safety problems and the health risks of its glyphosate-based Roundup products. This new book is just really more of a personal story. It's a narrative, heartbreaking tale of one man, the man who took Monsanto to trial over this Roundup cancer allegation, and is still alive but barely hanging on. And this new one is the story of his struggle, both to survive and to hold Monsanto accountable.
Okay, is his name Lee Johnson?
It is Lee Johnson, yes.
And how long have you known Lee?
Well, gosh, I started reporting on this book, a few years ago. So I've spent quite a lot of time with Lee since then, and met his family and spent time with him in his home in California, and just, followed him through this journey, through the court system. The book is also, a lot of the reviewers are taking note of the fact that it's a legal thriller, I guess, so to speak. Some people have compared it to John Grisham books, because I not only follow Lee's journey, but the journey of this team of lawyers that he connected with to try to build this case, to build the scientific research evidence, but also to gather evidence about Monsanto's internal knowledge and internal deception of this product. And so you follow these lawyers as they try to build the case. And there were so many crazy things that happened as they tried to get Lee Johnson's case to go to trial. Just really unexpected twists and turns and near fatalities. And, so I don't want to give away too much of the book, but a lot of people are, reading it more as just a legal thriller than a story about Monsanto, I think.
Well, Carey, as I look at the material that you've written so far, I find it to be fantastic. And that doesn't just happen. I noticed two parts before we ever talked. And the first one was, you've obviously got an excellent background in investigative journalism. Where did you go to school at?
University of Kansas.
Well, there you go.
Rock Chalk Jayhawk. I don't know. Am I hitting it? Are you an Aggie?
Nope. Hey, we're fine. I'm excited for all of the Kansas schools, and so I knew you went to KU. I think that's fantastic. And then you worked very hard to get to the position to where you are now to be able to write the books. That just didn't happen. And so how'd that come about?
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I always knew I wanted to be a journalist from the time I was probably 12 years old. I think I loved the book, All the President's Men, and the book and the movie about Watergate, and how these reporters from the Washington Post uncovered, the scandals that the president was trying to hide. And I just always felt called to try to dig up information that would be useful to people and would help them, but that maybe was hard to find. I have the, attribute, some might not call it an attribute, that I'm incredibly tenacious. If I get my mind set on something, I have a really hard time letting it go. And if somebody tells me to stop doing something, that makes me want to do it all the more. So I think I'm well suited for, digging up information that powerful companies don't want people to know. And that was very much the case with Monsanto and glyphosate and Roundup. It's not to say that this chemical was not useful to farmers. It was incredibly useful, obviously, a very important farming tool. But my position from looking at the research and the science and Monsanto's own, internal analysis and discussions is that the company pushed this chemical to such extraordinary use and hid the risks of human health problems so that they could roll out these Roundup Ready crops, so they could spray it directly on food crops, so that the EPA would say that it was okay for glyphosate residues to be in our foods. And for that to happen, they had to suppress the scientific research showing that it can cause cancer as well as other problems in humans, as well as environmental harms. And so I think, whenever you have public policy matters that are really important to environmental health and public health, you need to have all of the information. You need to hear about the rewards and weigh those, but you need to also know truthful information about the risks. And that's what I've tried to do, is bring some balance and facts that have been long hidden out into the light.
Was there something about it, Carey, that you found out from other research that led you into this area, or was it a contact with the law firm that you said, hey, I've got a question about what's going on with this, and did it lead through that door, or how did it happen?
Well, I started covering the agrochemical industry and farming in 1998. I'm an old dog. I'm an old veteran reporter. Reuters assigned me. Reuters is one of the largest news agencies in the world, and they assigned me to cover Monsanto and Dow and DuPont and Syngenta, and these companies that were really transforming the way our food is grown, and the chemicals and the seeds that are used. And, this affects farming practices as well as production, as well as the, quality of our air and our soil and our food, and of course, then our health and biodiversity. So it was a very important beat, and I really tried to do it well and, immerse myself in the industry. And so I've spent a lot of time with farmers and scientists and agronomists and people from the regulatory agencies and academics, and reading endless amounts of documents and scientific reports. So when the litigation, Roundup cancer litigation, came about in 2015, I was already well versed. In fact, I think I was one of the first reporters in the world to report about the scientific research linking Roundup to cancer. So this is a journey that really has been going on for 21 years now. I guess I'm in a rather unique position that I'm a woman who knows a lot about a pesticide. I don't know how useful that is to the world overall, but it's one little thing that, I have a level of expertise in.
Yes, you certainly do. And like I said, when we began with this, when I first started looking at the papers, I said, here's somebody who's an investigative journalist that's very, very good and has written a very good book. And then the second part was, I said, she has a heart for somebody by the name of Lee Johnson. She has a soft spot because that equates to an individual that you can put your research to an individual that you can sit and talk to and listen to his experience. It's not just research on paper. Now you can see the effects of it as you look at Mr. Johnson. Am I right with that?
Yeah, and I think that's been a technique or a tool, I think, that I've tried to employ throughout my career when you're writing about issues that are complex or scientific, involve words like glyphosate and non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Unless you bring the issues home and help people understand them on a personal level and what it means for an individual, it's hard for the message or the meaning of the story to resonate. So I always want to tell my stories through real people, and real impacts. And Lee Johnson was the first person, of course, to go to trial against Monsanto in these cases. And, I had to get to know him. I had to get to know his background and what he was going through and his struggle and his hopes and his fears. And I tried to share all of that in the book. And, it did, of course, it gets into your heart. I cried as I wrote parts of the book. I cried as I interviewed Lee at certain points when he was, going through some really hard times. He wasn't supposed to live this long after his diagnosis. He was supposed to live maybe 18 months. And he's got two young boys, and he grew up without a father really in his life, and he wanted to be there for his boys. And he's told me he's just decided he's not going to die. And so far he's holding to that, but it's a struggle every day for him.
Okay. And are you living in Kansas now?
I live in Kansas. I was born here. I did not really grow up here, but my mother and father had gone to KU, and my brother went to KU, and I went to KU, and my children have gone to KU, and Kansas is in my, blood and my roots. And so yes, and I doubt if I will ever leave.
Oh, you spent a little time in Chanute, didn't you, when you were a kid?
Yes, my mother was Miss Chanute. She grew up in Chanute, Kansas, southeast Kansas, a little small kind of farming community. And I ended up, my father plopped us down there for me to go to high school. We moved from Dallas to Chanute for me to go to high school. And, that was great. That was a great time being in that farming community. And we would ride up and down Main Street on hay trucks, that somebody throw a keg of beer on the back of a hay truck, and we'd drag Main Street. So gave me a real appreciation, though, for agriculture and farming. And
well, that's awesome. Being a Kansas kid, that certainly helped you when you started talking to farmers and people in the industry of it that were using the product. Why, I can imagine that you would open the doors very quickly. And then the law firm, in this case, was it a law firm out of Overland Park, out of Kansas City? Where was it from?
No, so Lee's contract with the law firm was a firm out of Virginia, a small town in Orange, called Orange, Virginia. And he saw these lawyers advertising and gave them a call, and thus the story began. You'll find out in the book that right before trial, there was a very tragic, unexpected accident that took place in which he lost his lead lawyer, and new lawyers had to come in from California just on the eve of trial. So he ended up with lawyers from Virginia and California at the trial, trying to help him win his case against Monsanto.
Well, I want the people to, of course, be able to get the book, read through it, because it's like you said, I think it's a legal mystery, and it's good reading. And how can the folks get the books?
Well, it's published by Island Press, so you can find it on the publisher's website, but it's sold in Amazon and Barnes & Noble and independent bookstores, and just about anywhere you can buy a book, you can buy this book.
Well, that's awesome, and we'll put the information up on the screen for you, how they can reach your website if they need to, and we'll just go from there. Now, Carey, thank you so much. I know you're a mom, and you got and a wife. You got what, 3 kids?
3 kids. 3 kids. The youngest is 13. So it's a lot of work. Yeah, it's a struggle. They're glad I'm not writing a book anymore. After writing 2 books over 3 or 4 years, I think that it took me. They're glad to see me out of my office occasionally now.
I'm sure that's true. But thank you so much for what you have written. And look forward to see how this is going to go for you, because I think it's a very, very well written book, and a topic that is certainly of interest to all of us. I still mow grass, I still spray weeds, I do those things like that. And then when I first read about the article with it, I took a quick look at it and I said, wow, this is fantastic. Fantastic. Good job. Thank you for doing it.
Well, thank you for having me here to talk about it. I appreciate it.
All right, you take care. God bless you.
Thank you.